For 3 whole years, my fiancé emotionally abused me. At a once-in-a-decade grand banquet in Hong Kong, he openly proposed to his first love. Later, I sweetly announced on my social media, I'm getting married. But he called me late at night, Oriana. I never said I was going to marry you. I chuckled softly. I never said the groom was you. Then, a set of photos spread across the internet, shocking the entire city. The man who held great power in Hong Kong opened his arms, allowing me to throw myself into his embrace, even lowering his head willingly, letting me kiss him. Chapter 1. I stood up after putting on the dress. The makeup artist couldn't help but whisper in awe, "Miss Liu, you look absolutely stunning in this dress." I gently thanked her and pushed the door open, only to be greeted by a stir downstairs. Through the giant golden revolving doors, I saw my fiancé of 3 years, Charles, publicly escorting a young and beautiful woman. More absurdly, she was wearing the exact same dress as mine. Tonight was a banquet the likes of which hadn't been seen in decades in Hong Kong. Everyone present was at the top of the social pyramid, sharp-eyed and astute. Naturally, they quickly realized that the dress I was wearing was nothing more than a high-quality knockoff. For 21 years, this was my first time dressing up like this. Turns out, I was just a well-dressed clown. Chapter 2. Charles. Who is the lady beside you? Someone curious couldn't help but ask. Charles held the woman's hand. This is my girlfriend, Selena. But after tonight, she'll be my fiancé. And what about Miss Liu? Charles looked at me coldly. The engagement with the Liu family has already been called off. For the past 3 years, the Zhao family has been more than generous to the Liu family. He wasn't wrong. If it weren't for the 100 million dowry given during our engagement, the Liu family would have gone bankrupt long ago. Would my parents, siblings, still be able to live in luxury? Charles then knelt down on one knee, pulling out a diamond ring to propose to Selena. She burst into tears, throwing herself into Charles's arms. He tenderly wiped away her tears, comforting and kissing her. I watched as Selena was surrounded by those socialite ladies, all eager to engage in lively conversation. After tonight, she would no longer be a minor star or a much-discussed third party. But as for me, Oriana, in Hong Kong and the Liu family, there would probably be no place left for us. Chapter 3. Can you move? A voice sounded from behind. I turned around to see 2 socialite-looking girls holding plates of hors d'oeuvres, staring at me impatiently. I stepped aside. Her dress is so cheap. Yeah, I wonder what kind of fabric this knockoff is made of. Touching it would probably cause a rash. And she still has the nerve to stand here, so embarrassing. Expressionless, I walked to the corner of the resting area, pretending not to hear their malicious gossip. My phone beeped, and I picked it up. My mother's voice came through, both angry and humiliated. Oriana, the Zhao family is breaking off the engagement, and we have to return 50 million of the dowry. 3 years, and you couldn't hold on to a man. You're useless. You figure out the 50 million yourself. The Liu family won't give a single cent. I stared at the phone after the call ended, feeling like my heart was being squeezed, suffocating me. All the bright lights and glamorous people felt completely detached from me. I just wanted to escape. Chapter 4. I heard Mr. Chan returned to Hong Kong yesterday and will be attending the banquet tonight. That's unlikely. Mr. Chan rarely attends such events. You're right. After all, the last time he made a public appearance was on the evening news. I pressed against my chest, feeling the pain, and reached into my bag to find my medicine. The rustling noise alerted the 2 women talking. Their conversation came to an abrupt halt, and they slowly walked away. My heart pain worsened, spasming, and the corset of my dress squeezed me so tightly that I could barely breathe. I had no time to keep searching for the medicine. I tried to undo the hidden clasps to take a deep breath, but after several attempts, I still couldn't manage. Today, Mrs. Liu had arranged for me to get new nails. Exquisite. But at this critical moment, they were practically deadly. I tilted my head back, gasping for air, my long hair falling messily onto the deck, and my lips gradually turning pale. Not far away, the banquet had just begun. My ex-fiancé and his lover were probably enjoying a sweet dance together, and I might silently die on this quiet deck. Chapter 5. Mr. Chan, are you going in now? Colin didn't respond, only accepting the cigarette case handed to him by his assistant. He took out a light gray cigarette and opened a small, delicate box. Holding the cigarette between his fingers, he dipped it into the finely ground deep red spice powder. Then he gently tapped off the excess before extending his hand to the assistant. The assistant quickly handed him a lighter, and Colin lit the cigarette. You all go ahead. I'll finish this cigarette, Colin said as he took a few steps toward the deck's railing. The wind is strong here. Be careful. The crowd surrounding him sensibly dispersed one by one. This time, Colin's return to Hong Kong was a significant step forward. From now on, in the entire city, if he said one thing, no one would dare say otherwise. The host of tonight's banquet had pulled every possible string to get him to show up. Originally, he wasn't interested, but after returning to Hong Kong yesterday, his family elders had been pestering him about marriage, driving him up the wall. So, he used this event as an excuse to steal a moment of peace. But just halfway through his cigarette, Colin noticed a slender, fragile figure not far away. He instinctively crushed out the cigarette and turned to leave. However, a dull thud from the deck made him slowly turn his head. The moonlight was dim, but that figure collapsed on the deck was endlessly captivating. Chapter 6. My face had probably turned ashen. Looking ghastly white, the faint moonlight fell on my face, which had lost its beauty and now showed only a trace of distortion. I looked at the unfamiliar man before me, as if grabbing onto a lifeline. I clutched his sleeve tightly. The survival instinct within me gave me an incredible amount of strength. I somehow pulled his hand to my chest. My breathing was erratic, and my heart rate had long spiraled out of control. He glanced at me, seeming to understand my discomfort. Without a word, he knelt down on one knee, his long fingers grasping my wrist as he calmly asked, "Where's the zipper on your dress?" I couldn't speak, struggling to pull his hand to my chest again. His brows furrowed slightly as he removed my hand and lowered his gaze to the neckline of my dress. Then, with a few swift movements, he unfastened the row of hidden clasps. Instantly, I felt relief as the constriction on my chest disappeared. Air rushed in, and I greedily took deep breaths. But I had completely forgotten that my dress was form-fitting, and I was only wearing petal-shaped invisible covers over my chest. Now, with the front of my dress undone, I had been completely exposed to him. Chapter 7. It wasn't until the warm weight of a man's jacket fell heavily on my shoulders that I snapped back to reality. I bit my lip for a while before finally looking up. My face flushed, and softly said, "Thank you. Can you stand?" I nodded, gripping the lapels of the jacket in one hand and using the railing for support with the other, barely managing to stand steady. "Do you want me to call your family or a friend?" I quickly shook my head. "No need. I'll be fine after resting for a bit." His phone suddenly rang a few times. I watched as he stepped to the side and answered the call. "I've told you. I'll handle the marriage situation. Don't worry. I won't let Grandpa pass away with any regrets." He sounded slightly frustrated and lit a cigarette. The glow of the cigarette illuminated his stern profile, and suddenly, I realized I had seen this man somewhere before. At that moment, he turned back, catching my gaze. I quickly lowered my eyes. He ended the call and walked toward me, the smell of the cigarette lingering in the air. I coughed a few times, feeling uncomfortable. "Sorry." He extinguished the cigarette politely. He then pointed at the jacket on my shoulders. "You can give the jacket to a server later." My face immediately flushed again, and I nodded slightly, whispering, "Okay." His gaze fell to my hands. I was gripping the lapel of his jacket tightly. Beneath the jacket, my dress had come undone, with only the silicone chest pads covering my skin, pressing against the delicate lining of his suit. It was an intimacy that only I was aware of. I felt uneasy and instinctively pulled my chest inward slightly. Just as he was about to turn and leave, I spoke softly. "Earlier, I overheard your call. Can I propose a deal with you?" I looked up at him with newfound courage. Perhaps he needed a wife, someone who wouldn't be a burden and could disappear at any time. And I needed 50 million to buy a pitiful sense of freedom. A deal? Miss Liu, what kind of deal are you proposing? I was so nervous that I hadn't even noticed that he already knew my name. "You need a wife. Don't you? Summoning my courage, I stared directly at him. I won't cause you any trouble and will do my best to cooperate with you. Of course. When you no longer need me, I won't cling to you either. He looked at me under the moonlight, dressed in a silver gray shirt and dark trousers, his lean but upright figure standing tall. His brows were calm, but his jawline was sharp. I glanced at the watch on his wrist. It was probably worth more than the apartment I lived in. What's your condition? I hesitated for a moment before slowly replying, feeling embarrassed. I need 50 million. For what? I lowered my lashes, not daring to meet his eyes. Yet, in front of a stranger, I somehow felt bold enough to reveal my mess and helplessness. My fiancé broke off our engagement, and I need to return half of the dowry, 50 million. I don't have that kind of money. Broken off? He suddenly turned to me, his gaze inexplicably sharp. Yes, broken off. I let out a light laugh and lifted my face. The sea breeze lifted my long hair as I gazed into the depths of the night. I have no way out. Sir. Chapter 8. I accept the deal, but I have one condition. I widened my eyes in disbelief, looking at him. Sir? We'll register the marriage within 3 days. This quickly? You overheard my call earlier. My grandfather isn't in good health, and he's eager to see his grandson's wife enter the family. After saying that, he raised an eyebrow and looked at me. Is that inconvenient? I quickly shook my head. No, it's fine. Then it's settled. The sea breeze picked up, blowing my hair messily across my face. He suddenly stepped forward, gently brushing the strands of hair away from my face and tucking them behind my ear. The day after tomorrow, I'll send someone to pick you up. But how do you know where I live? He didn't answer that question, and as he withdrew his hand, his fingertips seemed to graze my cheek. Or maybe it was just my imagination. He had left for quite a while, but I was still lost in the surreal dreamlike state, until Charles, slightly tipsy, suddenly came over and grabbed my wrist. Oriana, I've been waiting for 3 years, waiting for you to bow your head and beg me. If you're willing to soften up like those other women, I'll give your family not just 100 million, but 1 billion. You're drunk, Charles. I pushed him away, but a drunk man is hard to shake off. His bloodshot eyes stared at me, then fixated on the jacket I was wearing. Whose clothes are you wearing? That's none of your business. Charles. None of my business? His handsome face contorted slightly. Oriana, I want to see who dares to touch Charles Zhao's woman. He gripped the jacket on my shoulders, pulling it off. I tried to hold on, but it was in vain. The fierce sea wind blew, and under the moonlight, the pale skin of my chest was exposed. Oriana, Charles muttered in a daze. The next second, a sharp female voice rang out. Oriana, how shameless can you be? Oh my God, she's undressing to seduce someone else's fiancé. Mr. Zhao can't even take his eyes off. Selena, look at her tricks. I snapped back to reality, frantically trying to cover my chest. But Selena had already rushed over, tears streaming, raising her hand to slap me. Chapter 9. What's going on here? A deep male voice suddenly interrupted. Calm yet commanding, Selena froze, her hands suspended in the air, and the next second, Charles pulled her aside. I quickly stepped back, raising my arms in a panic to shield my chest. The crowd turned to the sound, and someone gasped. It's Mr. Chan. Which Mr. Chan? Who else? Colin Chan. I slowly widened my eyes, staring at Colin as he stood behind the crowd. The same man who had unfastened the corset of my dress on the deck earlier. The same man I had boldly proposed a marriage deal to in exchange for 50 million. He was none other than the famous Colin Chan of Hong Kong. Colin only glanced at me briefly before looking away. He leaned toward his female assistant and whispered something. She immediately walked through the crowd and came to my side, carefully draping the suit jacket over me again. Miss Liu, let me take you downstairs to rest. I stiffly nodded and thanked her, as she supported me while I left. I couldn't resist turning my head to look back. The crowd had gone silent, everyone standing still, holding their breath. Mr. Chan, it's all a misunderstanding. Charles, now mostly sober, carefully tried to explain. What misunderstanding? Colin's voice remained calm, showing no sign of anger. I slowly stopped. Standing at the corner, the assistant didn't rush me, patiently waiting. Charles's voice trembled slightly. Selena is my girlfriend. She must have misunderstood and lost her temper just now. Colin's eyes grew sharp, a hint of displeasure creeping in. I don't believe any reputable woman in Hong Kong would behave in such an uncouth manner. Charles looked embarrassed, while Selena, on the verge of tears, was mortified. Colin gave a calm order to his staff. Escort this lady off the yacht. Charles, Selena sobbed, clutching Charles's sleeve, refusing to let go. Having spent years in the entertainment industry, she understood the severity of the situation. Being escorted off the yacht in this manner would soon become the talk of Hong Kong. She would become a laughingstock, with no hope of recovery. Mr. Chan, I realize my mistake. Please give her another chance. Colin glanced at him coldly. You're welcome to leave the yacht with her. Mr. Zhao. Charles clamped his mouth shut, pulling his hand away. Selena was quickly escorted off the yacht. The crowd on the deck dispersed quietly as well. No one could have predicted the way this drama would unfold. Mr. Chan, the female assistant's voice brought me back to reality. I turned in surprise to see Colin walking toward me. He waved his assistant away and gently asked, Oriana, are you okay? I shook my head in a daze. No, I'm fine. I'll take you back to rest. Colin raised his hand, lightly holding my wrist. Is that all right? Disoriented, I nodded blindly, letting him guide me forward. But just after taking 2 steps, I felt a sudden chill on my chest. I froze as the paddle-shaped silicone chest pad fell from under the jacket to the floor. Colin turned, his gaze landing on the fallen chest pad. Chapter 10. I was so embarrassed I wanted to bury myself. He, however, remained calm as he bent down, picked up the chest pad, folded it neatly, and tucked it into his pocket before softly reassuring me. It's dirty now and can't be used again. I'll have someone bring you fresh clothes shortly. My face flushed even more, burning hot, and I managed a tiny Let's go. Colin took my hand again. The hallway wasn't long, and soon we arrived at the lounge. After sending me inside, he left for other business. I sat alone for a while, gradually calming down. But once I had, it finally occurred to me. Colin had initially addressed me as Miss Liu, but just now, he called me Oriana. He knew my name? He knew who I was. The female assistant soon brought new clothes over. I took a shower, changed into the clean clothes, and carefully folded Colin's jacket into a bag. I intended to have it dry cleaned before returning it to him. Mr. Chan instructed that if Miss Liu wants to leave, I should escort you personally. The assistant, who seemed to be in her 30s or 40s and very efficient, said, Please let Mr. Chan know I'll take the jacket home to have it dry cleaned first. No need to trouble yourself. Miss Liu, you can leave it with me, she replied. I didn't insist, handing her the bag, and then casually asked, How does your Mr. Chan know my name? The assistant simply smiled. That's Mr. Chan's personal business. As I left the yacht, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Oriana, it's Colin. Save my number. I stared at the message for a while, then bit my lip and replied, All right. Saved. I'll send someone to pick you up in 2 days. Rest well. Okay. Chapter 11. He didn't message again. By the time I returned to the Liu family home, it was late at night, but no one was asleep. The lights were on, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. The moment I walked in, my mother stood up. Oriana, have you thought of a solution? What are you going to do? How did you manage to anger young Master Zhao and cause him to break off the engagement? Exactly. Ori, don't you know? We still rely on the Zhao family's business to make a living. 50 million. Where are we supposed to get that from now? Your sister-in-law is about to have her 3rd child. And you're killing us. Everyone was blaming me for not securing Charles's heart, for not marrying into the Zhao family smoothly, so they could continue sucking the life out of me. But back when they pitted their healthy eldest daughter and shoved sickly, frail me into this mess, did they ever ask if I was willing? When they took the 100 million dowry from the Zhao family to cover their debts and maintain their luxurious lifestyle, did I ever enjoy a penny of it? Now the Zhao family wanted to break off the engagement, and they wanted me to return the 50 million all on my own. Fine. I was willing to bear it, but after that, I would no longer be part of the Liu family. Chapter 12. Ori. Say something. My sister-in-law stood up, impatiently nudging me. I've found a way to get the 50 million. You really have a solution? My mother's eyes lit up instantly, but it might damage the Liu family's reputation. What do you mean? She asked. I smiled faintly. At the banquet tonight, I met a wealthy businessman from the Philippines. After hearing about my difficulties, he agreed to pay the 50 million for me, but he has a wife and children, so I can only be his mistress. I had no other choice, so I agreed. Of course, if we go out in public together, our relationship won't stay a secret. How can you do something so shameless? Exactly. The Liu family is from a line of scholars, with ancestors who were successful in the imperial exams. If you become a mistress, you'll disgrace our family name for generations. Then what do you suggest? Why don't you sell off some of your properties and pay the 50 million to the Zhao family? The room fell silent. Ori. My father, who hadn't spoken until now, finally said, we can't avoid paying the Zhao family their 50 million, and we can't lose face for the Liu family either. I laughed coldly. Then just disown me, my sister-in-law muttered under her breath, holding her belly. At least you're sensible. Here's the plan. My father finally made a decision. The Liu family would announce publicly that they were severing ties with me, but it would only be for appearances. I would still be their daughter, and they wouldn't truly disown me. Of course, I knew this was just another one of the Liu family's manipulative schemes. As soon as the 50 million was delivered to the Zhao family, I would be kicked out immediately, but what they didn't know was that this was exactly what I wanted. Chapter 13. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I received a call from Colin. Oriana, check your message notifications. The money should have arrived. I quickly opened my messages, and sure enough, there was a deposit from 10 minutes ago. I've received it. Today. Take care of the breakup with Charles. I'll send a driver to pick you up. Colin, could I ask you a favor? Go ahead. Could you not let anyone know about our marriage for now? I didn't want the greedy vultures of the Liu family to latch onto Colin, causing him unnecessary trouble. You don't want people to know? It's just for now. Is that okay? All right. I'll arrange for someone else to pick you up. Once I returned the 50 million to Charles and the Liu family officially disowned me in the papers, I'd be fully prepared to support whatever Colin wanted, whether we kept things private or public. Because after cutting ties, the Liu family wouldn't be able to leech off Colin. After transferring the money to Charles's account, I saved a copy of the transfer receipt as proof. Just as I was looking at the Liu family's public disownment notice in the classified section of the newspaper, Charles called. His voice was hoarse. Oriana, where did you get the money? 50 million isn't a small amount. The Liu family couldn't possibly come up with that. Who gave it to you? Tell me. That has nothing to do with you. You've received the money. We're done. I was about to hang up when Charles suddenly called out my name. Oriana, do you think I cared about the 50 million? Whatever you cared about no longer matters to me. Oriana, you need to understand, if I don't give my approval, no man in all of Hong Kong will dare to want you. I chuckled softly into the phone. Is that so? If you don't believe me, feel free to try. I didn't want to waste more words on him and hung up immediately. Just as I ended the call, my phone rang again. I was about to block the number when I saw the name flash across the screen. Colin. Chapter 14. The Liu family is disowning you? How did you know? I was surprised. Colin's information network was impeccable. Oriana, yes? If you're feeling upset, you don't have to hold it in. I hadn't intended to cry. Truly, since childhood, I had grown so used to this that I had become numb to it. I'm not upset, but when someone shows you kindness, it's easy to become vulnerable. As soon as I spoke, I heard the tremble in my voice. Oriana, you can cry in front of me. After all, starting tomorrow, I'll be your husband. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. But before you become my husband, I've already given you another identity. What identity? I whispered timidly. Colin was silent for half a minute before replying. So, right now, I'm a 60-year-old Filipino-Chinese businessman, and you're my mistress? Are you mad? On the phone, I thought I heard him let out a light sigh. Oriana, see you tomorrow. Are you still going to marry me? I could tell earlier that he wasn't entirely pleased. Get some rest today. Tomorrow, wear your prettiest dress. Chapter 15. Colin must have arranged everything in advance because the entire process of registering the marriage went by quickly. After receiving our certificates, Colin took me to the hospital. He held my hand the whole time, making us look like a loving couple. His grandfather was gravely ill, but he managed to smile at me, looking somewhat relieved. I felt a pang of guilt. It didn't feel right to deceive someone who was on the brink of death. He must have cherished his outstanding grandson and hoped for him to have a harmonious marriage, but he didn't know that I wasn't truly Colin's wife. After leaving the hospital, Colin had an important meeting to attend, so he sent his driver to take me home to pack my things. The driver was a longtime family employee. Having watched Colin grow up, though his hair was white, he was still sharp and lively. When the Liu family saw him get out of the car and open the door for me, they all assumed this must be my sugar daddy. Out of disdain for my supposed mistress status, no one paid me any attention. I went upstairs to pack my suitcase. Only my father spoke a few words to me. This is just a temporary solution. You'll stay somewhere else for a while. Ori, once things settle down, we'll bring you back. I asked him pitifully on purpose. How long will that take? That depends on the situation. Then you'll keep your word? Of course. As I left with my suitcase, I could feel the collective sigh of relief from the Liu family. The driver took me to Colin's private residence. The house wasn't large, but it was peaceful and quiet. There weren't many maids or servants around, which made me feel at ease. Madam, Mr. Chan instructed that you should feel at home. He'll return this evening. However, at 8 p.m., I received a call from Colin. He had to return to the mainland for an important meeting and wouldn't be back for about a week. If you get bored, feel free to go shopping or meet up with friends. Don't stay cooped up at home all day. Maybe I'll stay at my small apartment for a few days. It's closer to Central, so it's more convenient. I'll come to pick you up when I'm back. All right. Chapter 16. On the third day of Colin's business trip, a volunteer I used to work with called me. They invited me to a small charity auction organized by the Socialite Circle. The theme piqued my interest, raising funds for children with congenital heart disease. When I arrived, I recognized quite a few familiar faces. Among them was Selena. Today, although she was still dressed to the nines, she didn't look well. It seemed that being kicked off the yacht that day had affected her more than I'd imagined. Selena noticed me too, but only sneered mockingly before turning to talk to the people next to her. Is it true? She became someone's mistress? Of course. It's true. Even her parents were so ashamed that they publicly disowned her. Didn't you see the papers? I heard her sugar daddy is almost 80, old enough to be her grandfather. Oh my God! How can someone like that be invited to a charity event? Exactly. We shouldn't be seen participating in the same event as her. Let's ask her to leave. The atmosphere grew chaotic, and the socialite who invited me looked embarrassed. Ori, maybe it's better if you attend another time. Not wanting to cause any trouble, I stood up, ready to leave, but just as I reached the door, I ran into Charles. Oriana? I ignored him and continued walking. Charles grabbed my wrist. Did you come here to see me? I pulled my hand free. No, I didn't. I just heard about your situation today. Charles blocked my path again. Oriana, return the money. Why? I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Wasn't it you who asked for the 50 million? Oriana. Charles's face darkened with displeasure. I told you. All you had to do was submit to me once. Submit how? I pushed him away again. Did you expect me to kneel in front of you? Like a dog, and thank you for your kindness? It's laughable. No one knows that the seemingly noble and righteous young master of the Zhao family loves to humiliate people with his wealth and power behind closed doors. My life may not be worth much, but I refuse to grovel or let myself be degraded. Chapter 17. Oriana, your reputation is in ruins. You should consider the consequences of your actions. Charles changed the subject. You're young, and becoming someone's mistress will ruin your name forever. This is my choice, Oriana. I'm giving you an out. Really? I don't need it. I brushed past him and continued walking out. Charles's voice echoed behind me, low and menacing. Oriana, I'm only giving you this chance once. Think it over and come find me when you've made the right decision. I didn't look back. But later that night, I got a call from my landlord. He ordered me to vacate my apartment immediately. I didn't argue with him and started packing my belongings. As I stepped downstairs, I was surprised to see Colin's car waiting for me. The driver got out and took my suitcase. Ma'am, Mr. Chan asked me to bring you home. Colin, is he back? He'll be arriving on an early flight tomorrow morning. My eyes suddenly welled up. Did he finish his work? He was supposed to be gone for a week, yet it had only been 4 days. Mr. Chan was worried you might be upset and couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm fine. His work is important. I don't want him to delay things for me. As I sat in the car, my mind was a mess. I couldn't quite put into words what I was feeling. It was like being a pitiful person abandoned by the world, only to suddenly have a fortune fall into my lap. When we arrived at Colin's residence, I went to my room. Just as I sat down, my phone rang. Oriana. Colin's voice was tinged with exhaustion. I suddenly felt a deep sense of shame. In my desperation to escape the Liu family, I had smeared my own reputation. He had so much on his plate, yet I kept causing problems for him. If I had stayed quietly at his home, none of this mess would have happened. Colin. I'm sorry, Oriana, he said, sounding slightly exasperated. I'm not blaming you. Let's talk more when I'm back tomorrow. After hanging up, I noticed a new friend request in my WeChat. It was from Colin. I clicked accept. His profile had only one post, from 3 days ago, and it was just a picture, our marriage certificate. I couldn't see most of the comments under the post, but I could read two that he had replied to. Yeah, I'm married. Meet my wife, Oriana. Chapter 18. That night, I also posted something on social media. Just 4 simple words. Getting married soon. Many people left comments asking about it, and some friends even called. When I answered, it was Charles's voice. So, have you come to your senses? I said I'd give you a chance, but I never said I was going to marry you. I couldn't help but laugh. I never said you were the groom. You're going to marry that old man? Oriana, are you really going to stoop so low? Willing to give yourself to a married man? I hung up immediately and blocked his number. That night, my mind was filled with too many thoughts, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. It was almost dawn when I finally dozed off. I didn't even realize Colin had come home. When I opened my eyes, I saw a figure emerging from the bathroom. Startled, I nearly screamed, my heart racing out of my chest. It's me, Oriana. It's Colin. Don't be afraid. I pressed my hand to my wildly beating heart. Still pale from the shock, Colin wrapped his arms around me, gently rubbing my back. Just breathe slowly. Relax. Everything's okay, Oriana. I leaned against his chest, and it took a while for me to calm down. Once I did, I suddenly realized I was only wearing a silk nightgown, and Colin, fresh from the shower, was shirtless, wearing only a pair of pajama pants. I'm fine now, I said in a small voice, my face burning as I gently pulled away from his embrace. Sorry, I scared you. Colin tucked a loose strand of my hair behind my ear. Why did you sleep so long? I had trouble sleeping last night. I felt awkward. My nightgown was thin, and I never wore anything underneath when I slept. Just now, I had been tightly held in his arms, with only a layer of thin fabric between us. My face was burning up, feverish. I clutched the blanket, wanting to wrap myself up, but that felt too obvious. Before I could figure out what to do, Colin gently guided me back down onto the bed. Go back to sleep. It's almost noon anyway. We'll have lunch soon. He casually pulled the blanket over me. I'll head to the study. I'll call you in a bit. When he left, I breathed a sigh of relief and let out a soft exhale. Chapter 19. During the day, things were fine. He spent most of the time in the study, busy with work, but at 9 o'clock that night, When he returned to the master bedroom, it seemed he wasn't planning on leaving. To be honest, I had thought about fulfilling my duties as a wife after marriage. After all, I had promised from the beginning to meet all his needs. I watched as Colin came out of the bathroom. After hesitating for a long time, I finally asked softly, "Are you sleeping here tonight?" Colin glanced at me, not saying a word. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Maybe Colin only needed a wife in name. Maybe I was just overthinking. I hugged a pillow and got out of bed, testing the waters as I said, "Then I'll go sleep in the guest room?" Still, he didn't say anything. I took a few steps toward the door with my pillow in hand. But suddenly, I was pulled back into his arms. "Didn't you say you'd meet all my needs?" "Mr. Chan. I stammered, my back pressed against his firm chest. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. The warmth of his skin seemed to rise, making me feel dizzy. Colin lowered his head, his fingers gently brushing aside the hair at the nape of my neck. "Oriana, you are my wife now." I leaned into his embrace, closing my eyes softly. My entire body relaxed as he lifted me onto the soft bed. When he bent down to kiss me, my fingers gripped his forearm tightly. My heart was racing, and it felt like I was running out of air. The kiss became slow and broken. "If you feel uncomfortable, just tell me." Colin stroked my flushed cheek, pausing until my heartbeat slowed before moving forward. There were several moments when I thought I might suffocate, but each time, Colin restrained himself, stopping at just the right moment. I could feel his taut muscles trembling slightly. The sweat from his forehead dripped onto my chest, searing hot. His heart was beating so hard, and his breathing was as erratic as mine. I was struggling, but it seemed he was struggling even more. "Ori." His voice was hoarse as he leaned down to gently kiss my face. "Are you feeling better?" I shook my head, then nodded. My eyes were already glazed over, and my hands had somehow found their way around his neck. It felt more like an invitation than a push. His eyes were filled with desire. For a brief moment, I even had the illusion that Colin liked me. "Ori." He leaned down again, his movements more intense this time. At the very end, I seemed to lose consciousness for a few seconds, but it wasn't like the painful episodes I used to have. Instead, I felt like I was floating on a soft cloud, wrapped in warmth, until Colin gently woke me up. "Ori, are you feeling okay?" I shook my head again and reached out, wrapping my arms around his waist. For a woman, there's a natural sense of reliance on her first man. Colin pulled me into his embrace. "Rest for a bit, then we'll go shower." As he spoke, his fingers brushed against my chest. "Is your heart feeling okay?" "I'm fine." I thought about the pauses in the middle, unable to hold back. I asked him softly, "Colin, were you uncomfortable?" He cupped my face and kissed me, his voice husky. "If you keep asking, I really will be." "No more, okay? No more." He didn't let go, though. "I just want to kiss you, Ori." I didn't say anything else, letting him kiss me gently. My mind, however, was hazy with thoughts. The way he called me Ori sounded so affectionate, but someone as composed and self-disciplined as him would probably only say it like that in bed. Chapter 20. I didn't have a chance to verify my suspicions, because early the next morning, Colin left for work again. I knew how busy he was. Being in his position, there were countless matters, big and small, that demanded his attention, so I obediently stayed home, trying my best not to add to his worries. Though I didn't leave the house, the days were exceptionally peaceful and quiet. For the first time in my 21 years, I felt the beauty of living a tranquil life. I didn't have to worry about being treated like a commodity by my family. I didn't have to feel hurt by the favoritism of my parents and siblings. I didn't have to think about anything. I could just focus on doing what made me happy. I even started playing the piano again, something I hadn't touched in years. I also bought online art courses and began learning how to paint with oils. After almost a week of this reclusive, peaceful life, Colin suddenly called one afternoon. He mentioned there was a charity event that evening, and he wanted me to attend. He'd already prepared a dress and jewelry, and a team of stylists would arrive soon. "Are you going to be there tonight?" I asked, I'll head straight there after finishing my work. What kind of event is it? Do I really have to go? It's a charity gala raising money for children with congenital heart disease. I think you'd want to be there. I felt touched. The last charity event I tried to attend, where Selena maliciously spread rumors about me, was also for children with congenital heart conditions. Apparently, Colin remembered that. Because of my own heart issues, I've always been invested in supporting causes like this. I still remember that even after I got engaged to Charles, I never missed a month of volunteering. I visited orphanages, meeting sick or disabled children, but Charles used to mock me for it. You're good at these pretentious acts of virtue. He didn't understand that I wasn't doing it for praise. I just wanted to help other children like me who had suffered. Colin, of course I'd like to go, but if you come tonight, we won't be able to keep our marriage a secret anymore. I wanted to ask him if that would cause any trouble or have negative consequences. Ori, from the start, the only one who wanted to keep things private was you, not me. Colin, I gripped my phone tightly, murmuring in confusion. I don't understand. Why did he agree to my request? Why had he never wanted to hide our marriage? Why did he choose me? I'll explain when I get home tonight. Chapter 21. When I arrived at the charity gala, I immediately drew countless stares. What puzzled me, though, was this. Since Colin was attending, this event was bound to be prestigious. The Zhao family could qualify, but the Liu family certainly couldn't. Yet Charles was there, and so were the Lius. When I entered, they were all gathered around Charles, fawning over him. My older sister, Carolina, was gazing at Charles with shy, heated eyes. Oriana, how dare you show your face here? Carolina's voice was incredulous. And soon, Mrs. Liu came over, her face dark with anger. Oriana, do you not understand what kind of event this is? You're making a fool of yourself. What will people think of the Liu family? I looked at the elegant, poised woman in front of me, feeling nothing. Didn't you already publicly disown me? So, I have no connection to the Liu family anymore. Whatever shame I bring won't affect you. But your last name is still Liu. Everyone in Hong Kong knows you're my daughter. Then what do you suggest I do? Oriana, leave Hong Kong. Have your sugar daddy take you abroad or back to the Philippines. Didn't dad promise me I could come back once the storm passed? Mrs. Liu looked at me like I was an idiot. What kind of fantasy are you living in? You've been removed from the Liu family registry. Really? Of course. So, legally and by blood, I have no ties to the Liu family? That's right. Good. I turned to Charles and said, you all heard Mrs. Liu clearly. Oriana, just leave. Why embarrass yourself like this? Carolina chimed in, pretending to be gracious. Young Master Zhao is here, too. Don't make this a bigger joke. At that moment, Charles spoke up. Oriana, didn't you say you were getting married? Young Master Zhao, her so-called husband already has a wife and kids in the Philippines. He has mistresses all over the world. Do you really think he'd marry her? So, your social media post was a lie? Before I could respond, Charles stepped forward and grabbed my arm. Oriana, I'm asking you one last time. Before he could finish, the entire ballroom fell silent. Mr. Chan is here. Why would Mr. Chan attend such a small gala? I have no idea. But tonight's a treat. We actually get to see Mr. Chan in person. Why is Mr. Chan walking this way? Oh my god. Is Mr. Chan looking at this side? Is he looking at the eldest daughter of the Liu family? Hearing the whispers, Carolina's face quickly turned red. Mrs. Liu's face lit up with barely concealed excitement. I turned to look at Colin. He was still dressed in his formal black suit, looking as stern and unapproachable as ever. For a moment, I felt a sense of unreality. This man, who I'd only ever seen on TV or in the newspapers, was now my husband. He had kissed me many times, and he called me Ori. He was always so gentle with me, like a perfect, caring husband. Ori, Colin spoke. For the first time, he called me by my name in public. Not Oriana, but the intimate, affectionate Ori. Chapter 22. The smile on Carolina's face froze awkwardly. Mrs. Liu looked equally stunned, and Charles was visibly shocked. I shook off his hand. My eyes reddened with a hint of vulnerability. Colin. He made his way through the crowd, walking straight toward me. Your dress looks beautiful today, and your makeup suits you perfectly. You look gorgeous, Colin. I felt like both crying and laughing at the same time. Just as my tears were about to fall, Colin pulled me into his arms in front of everyone. All right. I was just a few minutes late, and they've already bullied you. When he said the word bullied, his gaze calmly swept over the crowd. Mrs. Liu's face turned pale, and Carolina instinctively took a step back behind her. Finally, Colin's gaze landed on Charles. Young Master Zhao, what were you discussing with my wife just now? The word wife was like a bomb. The previously silent crowd immediately erupted into a low murmur. Charles still seemed to be in disbelief and stammered. Wife? Yes, Oriana is my wife, Colin said firmly. The moment Colin finished speaking, Mrs. Liu seemed to snap back to reality. She rushed forward, grabbing my arm affectionately. Ori, my dear child, this is such a joyous occasion. Why didn't you tell your mother? I pushed her hand away. Mrs. Liu, I'm no longer a member of the Liu family. Mrs. Liu froze for a moment, then hurriedly said, there's no such thing as an overnight grudge between a mother and daughter. Whatever misunderstanding we had, we can resolve it. I shook my head. There's nothing to resolve. I have no ties to the Liu family anymore. The family registry proves that. Mrs. Liu, now drenched in sweat, glanced at Colin with desperate eyes. Mr. Chan, you know our Ori can be quite childish. She's just upset with me. I follow my wife's lead. Colin wrapped his arm around me, his voice cool. If Ori says she has no connection with the Liu family, then she has no connection. Mr. Chan. Mrs. Liu's face was ashen. Mrs. Liu, Colin said suddenly, from what I understand, in the past 10 years, the Liu family hasn't donated a single penny to charity. At his words, Mrs. Liu's face turned red as a waterfall of sweat dripped down, her attempts to defend herself stammering to a halt. If they haven't donated a penny, then what do the Liu family members do at these charity galas? Just trying to gain fame. Of course. How shameless. Unable to withstand the humiliation, Mrs. Liu and Carolina hastily left in disgrace. Colin held me close. Ori, let's go home. We haven't donated to the children yet, I whispered, reminding him. Colin leaned down and kissed me lightly. The secretary has taken care of it. Chapter 23. Colin, my heart, it's giving out. In the dimly lit room, I felt waves of dizziness wash over me. The familiar sensation of suffocation crept in, and I clutched his arm, turning my face away to gasp for air. Colin lowered himself, pressing his forehead gently against mine. Ori, I could feel his pain as he watched me suffer. But there was nothing I could do. My body simply refused to cooperate. Colin, maybe you should marry someone healthy. Oriana. There was a rare seriousness in his gaze as he spoke. There's no shortage of healthy women in the world. But with me like this, what's wrong with you? He brushed the damp strands of hair away from my forehead. Oriana. To me, you're perfect. Colin, if your health isn't great, we'll take it slow. We'll treat it. If we can't solve it in Hong Kong, we'll go to Beijing, Shanghai, or even abroad. And if I still can't get better? Colin leaned down, kissing me tenderly. Then I'll live a life of abstinence, and we'll focus on building a peaceful, happy life together. Chapter 24. When the new year was approaching, Colin finally found some free time. He took me to Beijing, as it was said that the best heart specialists were there now. I was quite nervous when it was time for the examination. We'll do everything we can and leave the rest to fate. Colin, in his usual manner, fixed my hair. Go ahead. I'll be right here waiting for you. After all the detailed and professional tests were completed, the elderly specialist, with a head full of white hair, looked at me with a sigh. I've reviewed your results. Among congenital heart disease patients, your case isn't considered severe. If you had undergone surgery as a child, you would have fully recovered by now. I stared at the doctor in disbelief, shaking my head repeatedly. Doctor, you must be mistaken. Since childhood, my family has told me that my condition was incurable. They took me to many hospitals, and all said the same thing. Eventually, I refused to go back to the hospital, unwilling to hear the death sentence over and over. They told me that the only way I could survive and grow up was thanks to their care. It wasn't until Colin hugged me that I realized my face was drenched with tears. They lied to me, didn't they? Why did they lie to me? Why would they do this? If they didn't want to treat me, they could have abandoned me, given me away. Why lie and deceive me for so many years? Ori, don't dwell on those thoughts. What's most important is that you can recover. That matters more than anything else. Understand? I just can't make sense of it. Colin held me tighter. Then stop thinking about things that don't matter. Let's look forward and never look back. Chapter 25. When spring arrived, Colin came to take me back to Hong Kong. By then, I had been discharged from the hospital, and my health had greatly improved. A few days earlier, his grandfather had taken a turn for the worse, and Colin rushed back to the hospital in Hong Kong. It wasn't until the day before that the old man pulled through again and stabilized that Colin was able to relax. We hadn't seen each other for half a month. Colin stepped out of the car but didn't come over to me. We had a little agreement. The next time we saw each other, I would run to him. Like any healthy girl, he opened his arms. I lifted my dress and ran down the steps, through the green and yellow garden, light as the spring breeze. It was the first time in 21 years that I had run like this. Even the slightly cold spring wind felt warm. I threw myself into his arms without a second thought. I looked up, ready to kiss him, but today I was wearing flat shoes, and he was just too tall. I had to stand on my tiptoes, but he lowered his head and met my kiss halfway. Chapter 26. It's been almost a year since Colin and I got married, but that night, it was the first time I saw him completely let go of himself. He kissed the scar on my chest, the mark left by the surgery, still very clear and somewhat unsightly. I didn't want him to see it, so I raised my hand to cover it, but Colin wouldn't allow it. Does it look ugly? Just as beautiful as that night. So, you've been coveting me from the start? No, it started even earlier than you think. When? Had you seen me before? Oriana, are you sure this is the moment you want to reminisce with your husband? Colin pinned my hands down, leaning over me once again. Colin. I'm dizzy. I can't breathe. I was pretending again. He didn't believe me. Of course. But he still paused. Even in the heat of the moment, my heart was beating fast, but it no longer felt like it was being torn apart in pain. In my chest, there was only an unstoppable wave of desire. I wrapped myself around him, gently biting his chin. Colin, you don't have to worry about my health anymore. From now on, you can do whatever you want. I had seen Colin being stern and serious while giving reports at the Bay Area conference. I had also seen him running multinational meetings in the office, speaking fluent English, French, and Cantonese. At home, he had a more relaxed, easygoing side. Even the household staff would sometimes joke with him casually, but whenever he stopped smiling, everyone would immediately fall silent. And at this moment, his eyes were filled with unmistakable desire and a dominant sense of possession. He let himself be swept away by passion, taking me with him into the depths of indulgence. In the endless joy, he seemed even more immersed and invested than I was. I used to wonder why my family treated me the way they did. But now I understand. All the suffering and hardship of those 21 years were simply to lead me to Colin. Colin, do you? This was the first time I asked, though I hadn't even finished the sentence before Colin seemed to know what I was going to say. His kiss landed by my ear, his warm, wet fingers entwined with mine. I heard his voice, hoarse and low, seductive. Oriana, I adore you.